said, I mean, Oloture is big, and then you directed some major thing. I mean, you were known anyway, as so. I'm kind of wondering in terms of evolution. So how, for instance, did the producer of Oloture come for you? What have you done something with her before, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes, yes, yes. It's so I worked with a producer. I mean, so the Mo Abudu is famous in Nigeria.
Yeah,
People of course know her because she
yeah,
had a television channel.
channel, yes.
Yeah, and when she came, it's like different lifestyle. She wanted to show Africa in a different way. She doesn't want to show the poverty, the sort of like sometimes colonialist approach to how
Approach,
Africa is shown,
yeah.
and so she wanted to just like deal with the 1%, you know,
Mm.
and how it is and all of that. And so yes, we've had conversations before. I worked on one of the biggest series that's been done from the north. It's called Sons of the Caliphate.
Yes,
Yeah, because
you
I
worked on
directed the
that.
whole season,
Oh my
the
God,
first
I,
season of
I've
Sons of the
I've
Caliphate.
I've then I've not been paying attention because
Yeah,
I
but you
love
see,
it
because there's so many
so
things in my
much.
work, I don't
Yeah,
always put everything in my bio because it's like also I try to
no,
just
that's a
concentrate myself on
very,
film.
very, very good
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
but people really loved it and it was very successful for her
yeah.
as well. So, and we had a nice relationship before. I also did a TV series for her at the time. It was my independent company that got it when the channel started.
Mm.
And also when I traveled to Brazil during the World Cup, I told her to give me a camera because I know she likes the channel also wants to show they have like global appeal, and I wanted to just like show people from Brazil. And so yeah, I did all this like straight hi my you're watching Ebony Live TV, this stuff sort of stuff. And so I did all of that, so we have a relationship. And but we never agreed though initially about what film to make because there was one that was in development. I think creative differences, it also didn't work out. And then there's another one again we didn't actually work on it. But when she came for the third one, I think that's the film. I really like the idea, but I like the idea because I was also working on a project called El Dorado Road. It was at the Waga Film Lab in 2016, which is a big development program in Africa, for independent voices.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there we won the Yave Prize. And Yave is big because it's an elite development workshop in Europe. When you finish the development, it's 1 year. When
Hmm.
you finish it, then they bring in decision makers who actually are heads of like funding and all of that, and you pitch to them. So that was great. So when we were in the midst of that, 2017, she got in touch about 2018 about making Oloture. Yeah, and I like the idea because our film is on migration, but our migration is what we call the road to hell,
Yeah.
which is just beyond the border of Nigeria.
Yeah.
What happens in the desert and all the way to North Africa. But then hers is
Which is very, very tragic.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then hers is within Nigeria and about these girls that are paying to get traffic, which is a regular thing that we saw, but that we knew that was happening here because of course I'm from the north, so I know all of these stories. But for some reason, when the film came out, when we made the film, it was fascinating to see the conversation that Nigerians were having on social media
Hmm.
because some were wondering, oh, so people actually pay money to be traveling. I'm like, but that is the Nigerian thing. Like that's what everybody like what the whole
Yeah.
Japan that people are talking about
Yeah.
now. That's what used to happen. Like
Yeah.
across the desert, you pay
Yeah.
money to be trafficked. That's just
Yeah.
what it is. Well,
And
so,
most of them end up dying.
yeah, of course, of course,
Yeah.
of course. Like there's that whole tragedy as well. But yeah, so I really actually like that. Also, I read this book by Fatu Diom. It's called Belly of the Atlantic.
Hmm.
I was in Michigan, and then this Professor Ken Harrow, he's late now,
Yeah.
died this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me about this book, and then I read it because I told him what I'm working on, and it was great, right? And so all of that also just shaped my approach to wow, there needs to be a Nigerian film, a big film about migration, because we never really talk about it. When you see films about migration, it's always from francophone
Yeah.
countries, all the big ones, because they have all the funding. I think at that sort of like scale, Olotire was the first one. And honestly, as an independent filmmaker, I got good budget to work with. I got, you know, we shot with very small cameras because we wanted a documentary approach. You see, I'm coming back to documentary.
Yeah.
So when you watch the film, you see that we just wanted to be like, okay, the camera is just there with them, but not that, okay, oh, we're sitting back,
You're
we're
seeing
watching a
from the
movie.
eyes of the camera.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's cinema verite, basically.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so it was interesting to do that. But then the support system, and then even when the film was made, it premiered at Qatar Film Festival, which is one of those festivals I really like because most of the key African filmmakers I knew back in the day were always there. Semben, I
Mm-hmm.
think Med Hondo, a couple of them, yeah, were all there. So I like that because it's just like part of like the legacy of trying to be classified, trying to be seen, and trying to make films that represent Africa, and you're just like a part of that artistic conversation as well, because it's also important. I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned these things in interviews before, but I know I've written about it. um, I mean, in my unpublished articles, one of the key things that I really loved, um, that I had a problem at film school when I was in film school, was that you never get to see a lot of, I mean, Nigerian filmmakers in books, in academic conversations.
Yeah.
And that used to be a problem for me. Um, like I said, you might see maybe just Ola Balogun, and then even Ode Gboma wasn't really, I mean, talked about that way, sometimes. So we wanted that, and then, well, so with all of those things that are coming for me, it was just part of like the whole plan. That's we want to make our films that are international, and then also just appeal to African
So
audience
African
as well.
audience.
Yeah,
So what kind
yeah.
of challenges did you face?
In making Oloture,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, hmm, I we I don't really have a lot of challenges when I make films, and I really don't
How?
want.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is because when you are really trained as a filmmaker, when you understand story, you will also understand how to pitch. So if your character is not well written, the filmmaker should know that, okay, the character is not well written. And when you're pitching it to the executive producer, it's just about maybe understanding it. And I'm not saying that is actually what happened on Oloture, but it's just that the idea that you're working with producers who you know can take in your ideas, and really, because I'll give you an example. The first minutes of Oloture, the first scene of Oloture, I think it went on for maybe almost 7 minutes, right, as one take.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it was written as different scenes and different places, and it was going to break it. And I just wanted to just start with my documentary style from the beginning. And so when I looked at it, and I worked on the idea that I want these girls to come from the bike, and I want activities happen, and then follow them into the club, and then what happens, she gets this guy, and then they go upstairs before we cut. Lots of activities were happening, and conversations and all of that. And it was the first day of shoot. But when I wrote that to her, I mean, to Mo, who is the
So,
executive producer, and then of course, like, I mean, there's also Heidi, and there's Temidayo as well. They actually really like my treatment of it. So you see, I don't really have that problem of arguing with producers and all of that. And also, I also know that, because when you study film, you know people like Spike Lee. You
yes.
also know
Know
about
their
the
work. Yeah.
studio system
Yeah.
and all of that. So what you also want to do is, how do you balance some of these things? Because my idea is, as an independent filmmaker, you also need to have the platform where people can see you on a really big global level, right? So you can't, because when I made Confusion Hour, I talked about the problem of how we had problems with distribution, right? The platform. But you see, on this other one, there's going to be bigger platform.
Platform. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you're working with studios, it's about how you sell your idea to them. And if they buy it and it's successful, then of course they say, okay, yes, you're right. But then it's also just about having the conversation. Other people wouldn't listen. like some of the conversations that we had today about how executive producers will go and meet sound
Yeah.
with people making scores
And
and tell
say,
them, okay,
do
I
this
want the
for
sound to
me.
be this,
This,
but then the director is not there.
yeah.
For me, I wouldn't actually want that to happen to me, and I'm really lucky to just also because I'm very selective of the people that I work with.
That's what I
Because yeah,
want to say.
yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
You
Yeah,
work with professionals.
yes,
And that
exactly.
takes me to my next question.
Yeah.
So, independent producer,
Mm-hmm.
and then you work with different
Studio.
people's
Yeah.
different studios.
Yeah.
How I would not want to put it as challenge now.
Mm.
I would say how easy is that? I mean,
Working with studios.
and there uh, challenges in a way.
Yeah, you see, the truth is this, right? It's not easy to work with studios. That's what I'm saying. You have to just crack it. You have to just like know. I read this book when I was in film school. It's called Road Racers by Robert Rodriguez, and he was talking about what he did with Hollywood studios. He made this film, and deliberately, I think he left a shot of a tripod. He left a tripod in the shot because he wants another shot, right? So when the producers were watching it, then oh, okay, yeah, yeah, that's tripod. Like, I mean, yeah, you have to take out this shot. And he said, okay, yeah, I'm going to take out this shot. He knew he was not going to leave the shot, of course. He knew he was going to take it out eventually. But then he said, okay, yeah, I will take out this one, but then I want this one to stand. And they say, okay, yes. I mean, because they feel now they are powerful and they have taken out this shot, but they didn't know that it was
It
just
was
like him.
deliberate.
Yeah, it was deliberate because he knows that executive producers will always want to have an opinion, whether it is good for the film or not, but because sometimes they want to flex their power, right? So how do you go around negotiation and negotiating that? So studying all of these things really has helped me.
So that kind of teaches
Yeah, so
you
it teaches
how
me to
to
just
go
like deal with
about
studios
this.
exactly. Yeah. Also, always carry studios along.
Yeah.
You're going to shoot this particular scene. You tell them, okay, this is how I want to shoot the film. This is actually why I want to shoot the scene that way. And
Hmm.
if it is brilliant, then they listen to you. But when you're just like shooting alone and then they're lying, you're like, no, no, no. You say, okay, a professional. I say, no, no, leave me alone. Like, what are these people
You're
doing
in
here?
your own world and they
Yeah,
don't understand
exactly. You're
exactly
working
what
with
you're doing.
somebody's money. So you
Yeah.
need to just also just like, understand that. But I'll tell you what, with Olotire, the biggest thing that has happened to me is that coming from independent cinema, I wanted to really show that we can make, that big studios can make films on critical issues,
Hmm.
and those things will be extremely successful, right? I mean, when the ending of the film, because we had an alternative ending, which I'm not going to talk about, but
Yeah.
then uh, we pushed for the ending that we have, right? Even though, of course, I didn't like the writing at the end of it because, and the producers assured me, okay, no, don't worry, we're not going to have like the writing. And then later, when the film came out, like, I just see like, oh, many people have been trafficked. And I'm just like, no,
No.
like, yeah, people already gets it. Anyway, but the thing is that it it was so successful, and I think it was in the top 10 of 25 countries when it was released. The data that we got in the first 30 days was that 10 million accounts, you know, watched the film, and we had 60% completion, which is 6 million people, right? 6 million accounts.
Okay.
I know how it is with like accounts. You can sit down, plenty of people can actually just
Yeah.
like watch it, and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Because now they deal with streaming numbers, but it showed that gritty films, that independent cinema is always, accused of making only gritty films, can be made like, on big platforms, and it will be successful. And
Hmm.
to be honest with you, that has also helped in shaping a lot of some of these like trajectory in sort of like what big studios make, because it used to be very shiny things that they do, but now the subject matter has really gone to like, really people are not afraid of like showing dirt right now and showing real issues, and that for me I think is a triumph for independent cinema.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
really, 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 really huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about your current project. I know you're doing two projects. Are you okay to talk about them?
Which and which ones?
I mean, the Lagos
Oh,
thing
this
and
is
then
Lagos.
this
Yeah,
other
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. This is Lagos and
So,
Mojisola.
yeah. So what
Okay.
what motivated you to do this is Lagos and
Mm.
the Mojisola?
So for this is Lagos. We wrote it in 2013, I think. It was supposed to be our second film, after our first film that was very successful, Confusion Hour. But I think somehow for me, even though we're looking for funding, and we also, yeah, we were looking for funding and people were interested, but for me, deep down, I was also feeling that whether I really want to, just make this film like that, right? But also, the film is inspired by Lagos life. Now, I come from Jos. I don't know, what was the
Exactly.
first time you went to Lagos? Do you remember when you went to Lagos for the first time?
I can't remember. No, I think it was Ibadan that I remember.
Okay.
And then what I saw that
Mm,
makes me remember
mm.
is I got to Dubai, and I was kind of, was this guy from, from the village,
Yeah.
and I got to Dubai, and I
Uh-huh.
saw so many people, and I was asking, are they fighting? Why are so many people concentrated? I'm not
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. Continue.
And
Yeah.
then and then the way the bus conductors ply their trade
Mm-hmm.
in Kladugbe, which is Mokola Dugbe, and I didn't hear a word of what they were saying. I was like, so what's wrong? So I was overwhelmed. It was a big city, and then there was a big
That's
culture shock.
exactly it. You see, because when you go to Lagos for the first time,
Yeah,
before you go to Lagos, you hear about one chance,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You get into a bus,
yeah,
maybe all the people there are robbers,
yeah,
and then they take everything, they rob you, and then they just like push you
yeah,
out of the
yeah,
bus, right? That's one chance,
yeah,
right? Also, when you get to Lagos for the first time at the time, because people were not traveling, it was safe to travel by road.
yeah.
The major thing was that you get the cacophony of noise you get at Berger, because that's where the buses go to. The
Yeah.
first time I went to Lagos was
Yeah.
when I was going to Burkina Faso for Gaston Kabori's
Okay.
training.
Okay.
When I started hearing shout, because you cannot make out any sound.
Yeah.
You're just hearing it's like bees around your head, right?
Yeah.
So, but then Lagos has so many characters. They Everybody wants to tell you that they are something, but they are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sort of
It's a
like
kind
two
of
faced approach.
braggadocio kind of land. Yeah.
Yeah, they say, oh, somebody will say, oh, I'm a musician, but
Yeah.
apparently maybe he's a security man
Yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So those were the stories that we have in This Is Lagos,
Mm.
because it is me also looking at Lagos from the eye of an outsider. I mean, I come from a quiet town, and then
Yeah.
what
Just.
I remember from Lagos, that's what it is. But also, we have this tradition even from our first meal of like we talk about Nigerian issues, we have young people in it, but also we make it in a really funny way that like we laugh at ourselves, because as Nigerians we always laugh at
Not
ourselves.
ourselves.
Mojisola is because I came from Jos, and I remember how Jos was, and I wish that if I could make film at the time before moving to Lagos, this is the kind of film I will make in Jos. I want the quietness. We have like issues of like, I mean, conversation about spirits and all of that.
Mm.
But then, it's like, but then there's such of like big communalism amongst the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually what I wanted to capture. So it reminds you of like, if I made a Nollywood film in the 90s, that is actually what Mojisola would look like. The sort of colonial type houses that we have, our boulevards, our lakes, the mountains, those are the things that I capture. So they are really different projects. This is Lagos, but then Mojisola is centrally about like what it means to me to come from Jos.
By them, are both of them fiction?
Both are fiction, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm
In
curious.
fact, like the one with Mojisola, because because I have a prodigy of mine called Johnson, that he had this, he was telling me about this idea about um a spirit girl, you know. And also he made reference to the film from Kunle Afolayan's father,
Okay.
Taxi Driver.
Taxi driver.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Mami, what are you?
Mami
Yeah,
water.
exactly. And
Figure.
then
Yeah.
the guy, and then I
Yeah.
think there's a song, well, yeah, me, my lover, or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So it's what we did is actually a not to it, because our main character, his name is Opeyemi. That's Yemi,
Mhm.
right? And then for her too, yeah, like I mean, yeah,
Mm.
Moji Sola. So that's actually what like I mean, why we actually put that that's actually why we actually set the film. And then but that's the behind the scenes story of
So
like, yeah,
yeah.
writing the story. But
Mm.
then yeah, it's just a big tribute to just, but I also want to capture just beautifully, but tell a very compelling story that is very indigenous to us. Because every water you see in Jos, I don't know if you remember Jos very well.
Of course, I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
lived
know the
in
mining
Jos for a
waters we
long time.
have. You
Yeah,
know they tell you that if you enter the water,
yeah,
the spirits carry you.
yeah.
And you know the dead body doesn't come back
Come
until
back.
maybe after 2 days or
Yeah,
3 days.
yeah.
And that's what we believed. But then when you look at it, I don't know what it is, and I don't want to,
Speculate.
disprove that. But
You want to break the myth?
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't want to break the myth, but it could also be because of the mining activities, and there's like
yeah,
all sort of like tunnels and all. But you
yeah,
never really know. It could
yeah,
be spirits, it could be, but we don't really know.
yeah.
But that's not what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with spirits because I also, as an African, I believe in spirits. And
Mm.
when I had a conversation in New York and LA, it was the same thing. They are really fascinated. They don't really understand how almost like 90% of Africans or 80% of Africans believe in spirits. I
Yeah,
think it's almost 95% of Africans believe
yeah,
in spirits.
yeah,
Because if I keep something here in
yeah,
a wrap in a leather
yeah,
and I tell you to hold it,
yeah,
and I tell them, man, this is magic,
yeah,
chances are you're not going to touch it because
yeah,
you don't want to just like talk with the powers that you don't know.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, again, it has to do with nurture. I mean, yeah, the way
Nature and
one,
nurture.
nature
Yeah,
and
yeah, nature
nurture,
and nurture. Yeah,
and
of
then the
course.
environment,
Yeah.
and of course, again, I mean, I would like to admit that there's things we don't even understand, we cannot explain, so
Yeah.
we create this myth around them, and then that is
Yeah,
it. So
of
it's a way
course.
of life, and
Yeah.
I guess that's why, you know, Nollywood. I mean, maybe early Nollywood
Mm-hmm.
is very popular. I mean, people wonder,
Yeah,
why do you believe in ritual? I mean, you
yeah.
see
You
someone who
see,
can make
yeah,
money for
because we
someone,
believe,
is poor.
that as Africans, like
Yeah,
I mean, do you know the whole thing about rituals? Like my friend did a research in school then. Ali Mustafa, he made a research called the title of research is rituals giving the people what they want. I knew that was at the time when people are like, oh no, why so many ritual stories?
yeah,
But then you make those ritual stories and
yeah,
every day they are getting sold out.
yeah,
What does that tell you?
yeah. It
The
shows that people
audience,
believe.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they
love it.
identify with it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, again, this is, it's kind of challenging. The
Mm,
world is so sophisticated. I
mm,
mean, this is what I was talking about. Funke Akindele's
mm-hmm.
a
And
tribe called Judah.
Judah, yes.
This is someone, the father, the son, and he's
Mm.
still talking about Jesus. I mean, it was the son because the father, who's a pastor, didn't, felt that he had been misrepresented. If you believe in my God, you are disgracing me and whatever.
Yeah.
But he still calls on that same God, to help out on the children. At the
Yeah.
same time, calling on Jesus while drinking alcohol. So
Yeah.
you can see, you
Exactly.
can
All the
see all the
contradictions.
contradiction.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then again, this is what life is all
Yeah.
about.
That is us.
And I guess
That is
exactly that
us.
is the reality
Yeah.
of
That's us.
being,
Yeah.
who we are,
Mm-hmm.
because we live with this.
Yeah.
We kind of deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is in different circumstances. I mean, the way it's done in the Igbo
Mm-hmm.
is, slightly different. The
Mm-hmm.
way it's done in the West and
Mm-hmm.
then in the North.
Yeah.
But then the reality is that this is these
Africa.
are
Yeah.
reality.
It is
This
a
is
reality.
Africa
Yeah.
manifested in different, deep cultures, and then
Yeah.
tending towards
I
the
mean,
same thing.
also, I'll tell you what, like, one of the thing that also pushed me into storytelling
Yeah,
is that I read a lot of novels. So I read a lot of African writers series.
yeah,
I love it,
yeah,
right? And I really loved the writings of Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
yeah, yeah. Google what
Yeah,
younger, yeah,
it's because his writings,
yeah,
when it talks about that region of Kenya
yeah,
and the Kikuyu and all of that,
yeah.
think
All the
about it.
mythologies.
Yeah, but doesn't it also remind you of Jaws when you talk about white settlement, when you talk about the Rift Valley? These are things that I could see. So I thought like Africa was the
That's
same. I grew
interesting.
up in Jaws and I thought like, wow.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah. So I could
yeah,
not really relate with what Achebe will write about because I didn't understand like an Igbo setting. I
yeah,
mean, I knew it, I knew
yeah,
what it is. I have
yeah,
Igbo friends,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
could relate more with
yeah.
the
The mountains of
geography,
Kenya, yeah, the
exactly,
geography,
yeah, of that particular place. Also, the
the
colonials,
topography,
because
yeah, and the colonials dwelled in Jaws more than
because we
any
have
other
more
place. Yeah,
colonials there
yeah,
because of the mining and
of the
all of that.
mining.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it was everything that you will know. And even when you talk about maybe the weather, even if it is
that's
cold
what
or
I want
whatever,
to
it's the
say.
same
Yeah, the
thing.
temperate region.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and
It
the
was the
kind
same.
of crops cultivated.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
those are the things. Yeah. And think about it. Like, I mean, which one was it that the daughter actually wanted to be circumcised? You know,
Oh, yes, the river between.
the river between.
Yes.
And what happened to her?
Well, she died in the process,
Exactly.
and
And what does that tell you also? Because now you're left believing, okay, was it really the African tradition? I mean, think about it as a
yeah,
kid when you read that,
yeah,
like, is it African religion
yeah,
that the spirits
the-
actually, because she actually went against the culture,
yeah,
that's why she
yeah,
died?
and that
Or,
was the argument.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Or is it because, okay, maybe there's something that the sterility of like what was used,
yeah,
but as a kid,
as a kid,
you're
yeah,
not going to like, I mean, start, I mean, over analyzing all of that,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that's the thing.
and
So
that was
even in our
actually the
writings, it's
debate
like
in
spirits.
the
Yeah,
community
yeah.
too.
When you look at Chino
Yeah,
Achebe as well,
yeah,
his writings, when they
yeah.
talk about it, you see like, I mean, how we love, like, it's about the spirits. So it's all like, part of us. So that's what I grew up with, So
This is, I mean, this is really wonderful. Yeah, you can imagine how these kind of things, inspire stories, and then what really become not just a storyteller in the analog. I
hmm
mean, now in the digital world.
hmm
Now, the current state of things
hmm
in Nollywood,
hmm
vis-a-vis. I mean, there's a lot of streaming platforms.
hmm
Is that in any way affecting? I mean, your work um, as an independent producer? Does it
mm. I mean,
negatively,
there, there,
positively?
there, there, there are negatives, of course. There are positives. For me, I tend to see more of the positives
Yeah,
than like if it is really bad for us, because the first thing is that the world is really going super fast, right? And it's really opening up. And whether we accept it or not, it has actually really come to stay. So what you do with it is, I mean, it's really up to you. I've always been saying that. So positively, platforms, more eyeballs. I told you about numbers for Olotiri.
yeah,
I can never get that with just cinema, right? Because we don't really have a lot of theaters in Nigeria. But then now it is global. So your stories are going global. Now, what you present of yourself is now up to you as a filmmaker. I mean, yeah. But negatively is that there are so many it's almost like we're creating content without control.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And what that happens is that when there's so much oversaturation, you are going to you know the number of interests, we might actually just like lose that, because also because we're creating a lot, the quality might not actually be to a certain standard, and then the audience become dismissive. That's why you hear Nigerians saying, "Oh no, I don't watch Nigerian film," which is
yeah,
a sweeping statement.
yeah,
But then also it also talks about the fact that, okay, maybe 80% of the films that they have seen, they are not very good according to, I mean, to their taste in terms of maybe writing, characterization, cinematography, and sound. You see, so that also affects it. Don't you think so?
yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, again, because there's so many people, a lot of people have the opportunity, and people
Mm-hmm.
go. I mean, you were talking, from our conversation and
Mm-hmm.
from your works that I've seen, I've
Mm-hmm.
read about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have passion. There's this genuine interest. But what I'm saying is that
Yes.
yes, you do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You make a living doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but then it goes beyond just the money.
Yes.
It's there's I mean there's again there's devotion that you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah.
So, but there are a lot of people, again, I mean, I must admit, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people earn their living through this, but there are a lot of people, they just want to do it. Again, this is a way of making money, not
Mm-hmm.
just because they're passionate about it, they're
Mm-hmm.
interested. So that can actually affect the quality, as it were.
Mm-hmm. True.
Um, but then, again, I mean, I agree
Mm-hmm.
to that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, a lot of our culture, a lot of things are being known,
Mm-hmm.
and then about us
Yeah.
through this platform. I mean, this has been. I mean, we can go on and go on and on and on and on for
Yeah. Mm.
This has been a very very wonderful conversation. I look forward to seeing.
This is
This is
Lagos.
Lagos.
Yeah.
Again, it's my pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for creating time
Thank you,
to
sir.
speak with me.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.